This episode of Rethinking is sponsored by One Up Box.
Easy there.
What the fuck? What do you mean I lost karma? I'll show you negative karma, asshole. You know, I haven't slept for like 3 days because I've been thinking about this issue nonstop. Do I look stressed? I feel stressed. I've read 2 books on philosophy and read several neuroscience articles, and I've gotten drunk twice and gotten 6 new gray hairs, but I think I have finally figured it out. So I'm gonna go throw up in the toilet right now, and I will be right back and we can start this episode. If you've been following my series since the beginning, maybe you've noticed a bit of a pattern emerging, a tendency I have to, sympathize with the enemy. And we could focus on every game ever made and every story that's ever been written and ask the same question over and over again. Is Magneto evil? Bowser, Father, Elder Maxon, the Joker, Caesar, me, you? What is evil? Well, in the book, The Myth of Evil, philosopher Philip Cole says we're actually talking about 2 things when we say evil. Pure evil and impure evil. Impure evil, counterintuitively, is the term he uses to describe the concept of evil we apply to other people. The murder out of jealousy or anger, war, rape, selling drugs, cannibalism, infidelity, evil that is something bad, but evil that is diluted by the fact that the actions are carried out by a human with flaws, personality, pathos, and emotions. Pure evil is something that, for all we know, doesn't actually exist in real life, but we do know what it is. It's the very concept of evil itself as a acting force of nature. It's the dark side of the force. It's Diablo if he were, better written. It's Satan. Satan, the biggest symbol of evil we have, basically. Satan is the original antagonist. Actually, fun fact, Satan, or Ha-Satan, is a Hebrew word that literally translates into adversary, or one who resists. So quite literally, Satan started out not as the Abrahamic god supervillain, but just as an idea, quite literally any mythical antagonist. In fact, quite often angels in the employ of God himself were considered Ha-Satans. Over time, the idea of Satan as an entity took form in Christian mythology, and boom, Lucifer was born, the epitome of everything we consider evil. Cole isn't really too interested in the idea of pure evil as it pertains to our real lives, and I have to admit I'm kind of with him on that, since I've personally never met any sort of embodiment of malevolence or grand evilness. But what is far more interesting is the idea of impure evil, evil between people. And even in these grand, massive fantasy worlds created for us, the most epically big and powerful enemies are still in many ways human. Hermaeus Mora, for instance, is cold and lacking in empathy, but he is prideful, and in spite of being the Daedric Prince of Knowledge, is completely capable of being hoodwinked. Alduin too, and John Henry Eden is nice and pleasant and genuinely seems to care about the betterment of humanity. He just happens to have a terrible xenophobic streak. And we've already talked about the humanity of mooks, raiders, and bandits. So let's just pick some shitheads at random. What about the Umbrella Corporation? They're basically the Vault-Tec of the Resident Evil franchise. The exact plotlines and motivations of the Umbrella Corporation are muddled and confusing because the Resident Evil franchise is developed by Capcom, but the long and short of it is that almost nobody who's played a Resident Evil game is gonna argue. They are fucking evil. They're the worst. They engineered not 1, but 2 mega super viruses and unleashed them on the unsuspecting public, either on purpose or because they were negligent, creating an unstoppable natural disaster so terrible that the only reasonable solution the United States government could conceive of to stop it was to nuke an entire town off the map. And you know what? You're not gonna hear me defending Umbrella. Their actions were deplorable and fully emblematic of the worst case scenario of corporate greed run amok, where the only thing that matters is the bottom line and dominance of the market. People, the environment, and the far-reaching consequences are all afterthoughts at best, as a giant group of unchecked people do whatever they can for ultimate gains. Umbrella, Vault-Tec, their biggest sins are rooted in greed. But while Umbrella as a corporation is absolutely terrible, what are they? I mean, at their heart, they're people. Tons of them, actually, probably thousands. Umbrella is a massive research and development corporation working on super weapon level megaviruses, but they're still a corporation, and a corporation needs more than just evil scientists to survive. It needs accountants to balance books, and project managers to meet production and research goals, office assistants whose greatest evil is quite honestly misfiling a memo, janitors and maintenance people to keep the halls clean and the lights working, and most of the people working for Umbrella and Vault-Tec, in fact, could just as easily be working at any of the thousands of forgettable firms and corporations across the country. Chances are pretty high that the only reason they're working there is that it's one of the few large employers in the area. So what we're really talking about are a handful of researchers and executives, but what are their actual goals? Well, in the case of Vault-Tec, it is a little unclear. I'm sure they definitely love profiting from people's paranoia, but why the experiments? Well, there's not a ton of solid evidence on what the ultimate purpose of the Vault experiments were for. The only real answer to this, of course, is the non-canon and canceled Project Van Buren, which was the code name of the Fallout 3 game being developed by Black Isle. In Van Buren, it is said that the entire purpose behind the Vault experiments was to test the limits of human endurance, both physically and psychologically, in order to provide data to the remnants of the United States government who were planning on leaving the nuclear wasteland of Earth to colonize another planet. So you can see from that perspective how some of these atrocious experiments might seem worth it. Cruel and ruthless and utterly terrible, but the entire planet becoming uninhabitable due to nuclear fallout is a pretty extreme situation, which can push some pretty extreme survival instincts. And what about Umbrella? Well, the viruses created by Umbrella were originally developed to be sold to the US government, and possibly other governments, as an alternative to sending soldiers into hostile territory. Why risk the lives of your boys when you can just drop in a zombie virus and have the enemy be defeated by their zombified friends and family? The ethical problems with both Vault-Tec and the Umbrella Corporation are huge, like the incredible power imbalance of turning people who are utterly dependent on you for survival into unwitting test subjects, or the human rights violation of using biological and chemical warfare on enemy combatants. They are terrible, terrible, but they are understandable. I mean, how many times have you been tempted to cut corners because it's easy? I do it all the time, and sometimes I pick my nose when nobody's watching. It's easier than finding a tissue. Now, what if I had effectively infinite money and government support? The stakes to produce are higher, the corners you cut become bigger, and the consequences further away. And the result? Thousands or even millions of people can be brought to their knees. And this happens all the time in real life. And in fact, you're experiencing the fallout of one of them right now, the 2008 financial crisis. Without getting into too many of the boring details, financial traders throughout the world got really into these special type of mortgage investments that, on paper, offered low risk and huge gains. Easy money. Well, as these investments got more and more popular, mortgages got easier and easier for folk to obtain. And people who had no business having any mortgage at all were getting mortgages for hundreds of thousands of dollars, and in some cases, millions of dollars. On paper, the system could just absorb people who defaulted with minimal impact because the risk was spread across a bunch of people. In what will become a running theme in the course of humanity, a story that seems too good to be true almost always is. The projections were wrong, mortgage values that had been rising aggressively for months plummeted, and when the debts were called in, nobody had any money to give, and suddenly, everything was fucked. The corporations, the people who had mortgages, and everyone else. It affected the whole world. And while these financial corporations were way less shady and malicious than Umbrella and Vault-Tec, they still suffered from a similar degree of short-sightedness, greed, and a willingness to take shortcuts for easy gains. This is the impure evil that Philip Cole is talking about, which, if you've been paying attention, seems less and less evil the more you look at it. I mean, every time you zero in on a situation and pick it apart, you find less evil and more circumstance. In fact, at the end of it all, Philip Cole proposes a radical idea that evil doesn't actually exist, that the word evil is a catch-all term to describe bad things. This sometimes has a use, but more often than not, it seems to oversimplify, especially if you call something evil and just walk away from it. And I'm gonna do us a solid, by the way, and not talk about Hitler for once, except for just then, but I am going to talk about something that's a lot more real to a lot of us and a lot harder to look at complexly. Terrorism. On September 11th, 2001, 19 extremists hijacked 3 airplanes with the intent to use them as a weapon. 2 of the planes found their targets, striking the World Trade Center buildings. All in all, 2,996 people died, hijackers included. And on November 13th, 2015, a series of coordinated suicide bombings and mass shootings occurred in Paris, France, killing 130 people and injuring hundreds more. And sure, it may be fun to pick apart the Enclave, Vault-Tec, Alduin, Umbrella, and the Institute and consider that they're not, in fact, evil. Hell, even Wall Street traders, divorced from empathy and the consequences their actions bring upon individual people. We can stop to consider that these are human beings who made choices. But there are actions like the attacks on the World Trade Center and Paris that stretch our abilities to empathize. Even suggesting it now, seems wrong. Evil is easier. Evil is more comfortable. Evil protects us from having to contemplate the motivations and minds of people who are so desperate to inflict harm on other people that they are willing to strap explosives to themselves. Evil is easier than even trying to unwrap the complex and old geopolitical circumstances that reach all the way back to World War II, or even further back to the age of imperialism, where European countries developed the fun habit of arbitrarily carving up swaths of land and turning them into territories without any respect to the incredibly diverse local cultures. Thinking of extremists as evil is more comfortable than facing the possibility that by providing arms and destabilizing governments to suit our own short-term interests, we may at least be partially responsible for the circumstances that made extremism possible to begin with. Calling regimes and countries evil makes it easier to justify retaliations that cost 500,000 Iraqi citizens their lives. Calling someone else evil makes it easier to ignore the possibility that we ourselves may be evil to someone else. Evil keeps us from empathizing with others, but more importantly, dismissing actions as evil can keep us from examining the circumstances surrounding horrible acts. And if we don't try to understand why these terrible things happen, how can we ever hope to prevent them from happening again in the future? I mean, and don't get me wrong, empathy and understanding are not the same thing as endorsement. Trying to see the human behind terrible tragedies does not make the tragedies any less terrible, but they can be a terrible thing that you know. And something that you know and understand, well, that is a potential tragedy in the future that you might be able to stop. Video games offer us a safe place to explore morals, ideas, and consequences. They're a place where we can ask these questions without it feeling too weird. We can explore the motivations of organizations like the Enclave, Umbrella, or Shao Kahn if you're feeling frisky. But I want to be perfectly clear, these questions aren't meaningless. The questions that games ask us and the questions that we ask games and ourselves are incredibly important and carry real weight and affect the way that we look at the world around us. And can you understand Alduin? Are synths people? Is the Enclave evil? Or more importantly, are we? Thanks for watching. I have no idea if I'm in focus, but before we go any further, we have to hit the sponsorship music for a sponsored unboxing from 1UpBox. So this is February's 1UpBox that they have sent to me, and I cannot figure out how to open it. Okay. Let's see what's in here. They say, I understand, that there is supposed to be a shirt every time. So let's see what we got here. I'm not gonna fake any emotion, even though I'm okay. I see something I'm actually kind of excited about. I have an amazingly beautiful Link on the Game of Thrones throne. Kinda awesome. I have no idea where it's gonna go in my life. All right, we have a, oh! Okay, this I'm actually pretty stoked about. It is a Deadpool why is the, okay, marketing thing, why is a letter a thing? Where are all the vowels? It's a Pokemon pit. Is it upside down? Oh, there we go, it's Mew. I was like, what is that ugly fetus monster? I can't get it to get in focus. I don't actually know what it's referencing, so, or what video game it's referencing, because I'm apparently a loser and don't know. And wow, get out of there! I hope that's not worth any money because I totally just ruined it. So this is all the stuff, and I just discovered that there is actually a guide that comes with it. that I could have used the whole time to make myself look very smart, but instead you get to see how stupid I am. And if you're interested, it's $13. We have a link down in the description, and we will be giving one of these away to a lucky Shoddycast subscriber. So just leave a comment in the comments telling me your opinion. Even if your opinion is a bad one that doesn't agree with me, I will. It'll be a random. I'll randomize, pick people. I won't even look at what you say. So just comment and be subscribed to the channel, and that's all it takes to win. Just don't say anything racist. And now that that's over, what do you guys think? Is evil real? Am I crazy? Did I stay up far too late? I did. And before you ask, no, I'm only like an hour into Undertale, but it is probably a good game to play if you're curious on exploring this topic more based on my hour into it. Another game that I highly recommend if you want to experience what it's like to empathize characters that are not typically empathized in a lot of games is Life is Strange, which spent a lot of time empathizing the bullies, for one of my favorite ones, where it takes characters who are usually one-dimensional people who exist solely to make other people miserable and makes them way more complex. Anyway, thank you for watching, and thank you for putting up with our sponsorship. And if you are interested in having a free 1-Up box of your own, spoiler alert, I'm recording this before opening the box. You're getting a peek behind the cloth. Just leave a comment down below. We will be picking one lucky Shoddycast subscriber to get their own 1-Up box. That's very exciting. I hope I didn't break anything, but I guess we'll find out when we do the thing that already happened that I haven't seen yet. Anyway, thank you so much, and I will see you I'll see you next week for other stuff, but I'll see you for Rethinking in a couple of weeks. You stay sexy and beautiful. Yeah. Woo!